Good morning. Welcome to 3-Minute Manna. It is good to see you today. It is Old Testament Monday. Let's come back to Genesis chapter 4. Let's talk about Cain. Verse 8, it says, "Now Cain talked with Abel his brother, and it came to pass when they were in the field that Cain rose up against Abel his brother and killed him." If this event would have happened today, I wonder who would have gotten the blame. I think the first thing we might mention, it does not say what Cain used to kill Abel. He might have simply used his bare hands. I don't know. But if he used some implement to kill him, I think a lot of folks would have blamed the implement, whether it was a rock, whether it was a tree limb, whether it was a blade of some kind, or some sort of spear, or whatever it was, they would have blamed the implement. I think that would have been the first option. But also, I think if this event would have happened today, who else or what else might folks have blamed? I think some folks would have blamed Adam and Eve. They would have said, well, maybe he didn't have the upbringing that he needed to. Maybe it was Adam and Eve's fault. That poor child, it probably was his parents' upbringing. He probably wasn't brought up correctly. Not trying to say that parents don't play a part in it, but sometimes we make the sinner into the victim when the Lord held Cain responsible. But that's the second party that people would have blamed. But also, I think people would have said, well, maybe he had some sort of mental illness. You know, maybe he needs to plead insanity. I'm not trying to say that mental illnesses don't happen, but I think sometimes people go looking for a reason, again, rather than holding people responsible. And sometimes even mental illnesses, that sometimes we actually feed them. Sometimes individuals actually feed their own, even creating their own mental illnesses. And in that sense, they are still responsible. But also, I think if this event would have happened today, I think people would blame God. They would say, well, how could God allow this to happen? If God is so powerful and if Abel is so righteous, then obviously God does not exist, or God is just a horrible God because God allowed Abel to be killed. What we see from the account is that God held Cain responsible. He held the sinner responsible. And what we see is that Cain, you might think about, as Cain brought his offering and Abel brought his offering, Cain brought of the field. Abel, he brought of the flock. He brought of the flock, and as it says, as they brought their offerings, you might think about what, as the Lord respected Abel's offering as he brought from the flock. What was a blood offering for? A blood offering was for sin. Cain already had a sin problem. He already had a sin problem. And what you see is that if you don't deal with sin, sin multiplies. And it multiplied in Cain's life, and God held him responsible for what he did. Hope you enjoyed this study. We'll see you tomorrow morning.